Welcome back to Survivor Breakfast. I'm your long lost host, Simmons. I am joined as always by oh yeah, my little trip over to Shipwheel Island for this week's episode. Joined as always by Toast and Kale. Boys, this was an absolutely phenomenal episode. We've been waiting for some real strategy play, some real shit to go down. I'm excited. To get into this, I'm so excited. There's a lot that happened this episode, so we're actually gonna jump a little bit farther in time here. We're gonna jump right to this immunity slash reward challenge, and the beast that is Jonathan. Kale, I'm gonna toss it to you. What are your thoughts on this challenge here?
Oh, first off, very well said. I mean, we're 3 for 3 through this season, and we're hitting stride on what I hopefully, if this can carry some momentum, might end up being a truly epic season. All in all, I'm on cloud nine right now. I'm on a literal and figurative high. I am on cloud nine right now. You toss it to me for this immunity challenge. I mean, this was our dark night. This was our dark night, Jonathan. I mean, this was epic. I mean,
Insane.
how do you describe someone literally carrying a ladder, trudging through the water, carrying his teammates, going back, grabbing them? Meanwhile, it seems like the other two tribes have got, taken away to a different island, and they floated away into the abyss. I mean, this
They got
guy.
swept up.
I mean, this guy was, to me, I don't know how you guys view it, but one of the most epic performances in Survivor Tribe Immunity Challenge history.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I totally agree. I think it probably was the best of any individual person in a tribal setting. I mean, you think back, there's been some challenge beasts in the past, but very few people have been able to actually put their entire tribe on their back, win a challenge on their own, while two other tribes are being taken away by the tides. I mean, he did it by himself.
He did every single phase of this challenge by himself. Meanwhile, Tribe 2 and Tribe 3 are sitting in stage 1 of the challenge. Man, it was epic.
I mean, it's actually crazy. It's just a pure solo challenge win. He just did it all on his own. That's it. And the other tribes couldn't do it with four people.
No,
insane.
it was wild. It was wild. It was a true testament to how Taku has now, kind of formed their niche crew that this they might be a power to be reckoned with pre-merge. But let me just make one hot take here, and I don't want to take away from the fantastic producing and the fantastic casting that has already gone into these first 3 episodes, but this is an epic failure on Survivor's part right now. To have one individual, male or female, being able to take over a challenge in this manner, I'm sorry, it can't exist, because this is what we predicted in the preseason. So you take away one medical exemption. I'm sorry, medical leave. That was Jackson. And you add as well an immunity challenge last week where they made a bad decision, and that came down to just decision making. And they still had a really good chance last week, even with that being the case. You take those two things away, Taku is dominant, and it could have just been the same Luvu situation that we saw last season. And that's the one fault I'm going to say for Survivor's sake right now. It's not great that they had one dominant figure on this tribe, and the other two tribes are swimming literally just to, not drown.
Yeah, I think it sucks because it's 2 seasons in a row now that it seems like, the way this is going so far for Taku, that we've got 2 seasons in a row where there's one tribe who just absolutely dominates, challenges and.
At least in this case, we get to see other tribes go to council, right? Like, we're seeing them go.
At least.
But
no,
yeah,
and if you take the medi. If you take
I
the
was going
medi
to say,
back,
if they had it their way, it probably would have been a sweep. Like, if you take the meta back, like you're saying, out of the equation, right? They could, we could. There's definitely a reality where Taku does not see tribal before the merge. I mean, we predicted it, and a couple things here and there, a little wonky, variants, and here they are, the smallest tribe. But I don't think that's the way it would have gone most scenarios.
Absolutely. Now, I think the problem is that this is kind of a casting issue here, because it's not like you can rebalance the teams to make this more reasonable when one guy can carry the entire challenge. You need to cast other people who can play on Jonathan's level in order to make this, reasonably balanced.
There may not be anyone. There may not be a single person.
That's the other problem. But I mean, we've seen seasons
No, it
where
was
like
godlike though.
you've got people like James in his prime. I don't doubt that he could do something like this in a challenge. He has. We've never seen him do something like that. We've never seen anybody do something like this. So I think
he actually
there are
did
people
do something
that you
kind
can
of
get
like
that can
this.
do like this. Oh, really?
James did, yeah, but not for a tribal immunity. It was for a reward challenge where when they carry those poles, and basically Parvati got on top of the poles, and instead of having to step on multiple poles, James just really walked the whole thing over. Totally broke the challenge. But it's interesting that you bring up James, because I think that we talked about it in our pre season analysis, like looking at the cast. We said that, in Survivor China, they put James on Fei Long, right? And nobody was there to match him on John Hu. Like, there was no other person. And then they sort of rectified that in Micronesia. They had this guy, Joel, right? Truck. He came in and he was pretty big. He didn't really stack up to James anyway, but at least they put someone who fits his mold on the other tribe to give him a chance. Here, we said it from the beginning, and we'll say it again. Jonathan is on an island of his own, right? There's no one else that looks like him, can act like him in these challenges. There just isn't any person like that.
Yeah,
when he was trudging through the water, it was truly epic. And I'll leave it at this. And I don't think it had to be a true epic failure on Survivor's part, and not that it's going to ruin the season by any means or anything like that. I don't mean to say it in that manner, but honestly, if you're going to do this, make the immunity challenge more like what we saw last week with having blindfolding and having puzzles be more piece of the puzzle here, where it's not one person can take over in the entirety of a challenge. Yes, they could not forecast that the waves.
Yeah, how could they predict that?
No, I know.
No, not just the waves. How could they predict that any one individual would just do the whole challenge? I mean,
no, and
it's
that's
tough
probably
to even guess that.
Yes, 100%. But I
get the point.
If there's one takeaway that the producers have, they have to remedy this piece of it, because, I saw there.
I can almost guarantee you we're not going to see another fully physical challenge like that for the rest of the season. There's no way that the producers saw that happen in season and not said, hey, we got to do some tweaks if there's anything else like this, because they can't have that. They don't want that to happen again. I mean, it's exciting to happen once. If it happens more than once, people are going to get, bored with it. But that was the crazy immunity reward challenge. Taku obviously took the win with Jonathan's help there. I want to get into this next piece, because the rest of this episode is a whirlwind. It is a sprint to the finish. It's so exciting. We're going to talk about Shipwheel Island next. Chanel gets sent there with Omar.
Taku made these choices to
Taku made these choices
and then send Omar. Curious decisions.
Yeah, it's interesting to me. I think. Let's get into it. Toast, I want to throw it to you first. What are your thoughts on what happened on Shipwheel Island and maybe the decisions that led those players to get there?
Yeah, I mean, so just to the first point, right, where Taku gets to now pick, right? They did that last season too, right? It's like this weird like checks and balances system where the winner then gets to put themselves in an advantageous position, because the people that are going to Shipwheel that they select from the losing tribe already have this pressure of, tonight I'm going to tribal. There's this like always like a looming threat of tribal, but when you select someone who's about to go to tribal, you're sort of stacking the odds in the favor of the person getting the advantage to be on the winning tribe, right? So in a way it's checks and balances, but in a way it's the rich get richer. So we go to Shipwheel, right? And we have Omar and Chanel. It's a great duo. Love seeing them. Honestly, happy to see more of them. We skip the whole walk, right? We've seen the walk. It's tough.
Yeah, we don't need it.
Next, they get to the thing. They sit down, and really an interesting conversation, in my opinion, takes place, right? And a lot of this actually goes back to Simi, what you were saying in our first episode, where Jenny was the person who was thinking about what other people were thinking, and I think we saw a real failure on Chanel's part to think about what other people were thinking. So what do we see, right? Omar says, if there's something like where we can both win, maybe we should try to make sure both of us win. I want to build something here. And Chanel out loud verbally says, I need my vote tonight. She says it out loud, I need my vote tonight.
Well, and she's also going to tribal. Face value. They're going to tribal. Yeah.
But but I'm saying, what is she conveying to the other person?
Yeah,
right?
Of course.
And Omar does a really good job of actually saying to the audience, like, you need to focus on motivations. What motivates people?
Yes.
And Omar made what I can only define as a rational decision. He made a rational decision knowing Chanel's motivations, and it just so happens that Chanel made an irrational decision. And obviously, if you're playing a perfect game where everyone's rational, you're never going to run into that problem, right? Because Chanel really made a poor move. There's no way to slice it any other way. She said, I want to be risky. I want to play like this. And she just turned the wheel.
Yeah.
And I mean, I want you guys to obviously have, your input here, and I want to hear what you guys think. But I think we could probably all agree that Chanel really dropped the ball here.
Stock report.
Let's be
stock
clear.
report. Stock report.
Chanel's decision is the reason we had this exciting of an episode.
Yeah, so thankful.
I'm happy because that was really fun to watch. But
Yeah.
absolutely, Toast, that was a huge blunder. I mean, in this analogy from what we talked about 2 weeks ago, in this scenario, Omar is the Jenny and Chanel is the Marianne, where Omar really thought, okay, what is she planning to do? She told me she needs to save the vote, and she's going, so I believe her motivation there.
Yeah.
And Chanel just didn't do that. She just said, well, what do I want to do? She even said the exact same thing that Marianne said, where she said, what kind of game do I want to play? I want to play hard.
Yeah, she didn't even think about what she conveyed to herself, like what the info
she started to
gave
mention
up.
it, but it was a blatantly
afterthought.
wrong read. I mean, she said like, well, I think that he wants to help me out, and so he'll play
it was
safe.
blind.
But
it
it's
was
just
blind
a wrong
trust.
call.
It was blind trust was her rationale. Blind trust was her rationale, but she just really couldn't help herself. Is really what.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I
I mean, she was
totally
justifying
agree.
it after the fact. You're right.
Totally
You're right.
agree.
Totally.
And that's a theme this season. That's an overall theme this season. We saw it with Marianne earlier in the episode. We can talk about that later with the beware advantage. You both have come down on Drea for having this mindset the entire time, not giving a fuck. A lot of these contestants this season, other than really, I get the rationale, and him being rational. In his decision making, being Omar, I completely agree with you there. So I don't really necessarily think that was too much of a risk. But a lot of these contestants are really not caring too much of the consequences, and I guess that's what Survivor's trying to implement now with these types of advantages and everything. Is that really try to think everything through.
Mm-hmm.
But Chanel didn't help herself. Great point.
No, I mean, absolutely. I think it's a bad sign for Chanel from me. For long-term, game health. But a good sign to me from Omar. And I know that his decision didn't end up working for him. But we make this analogy to poker all the time, where sometimes you make a good decision and you get a bad outcome. I think that this is a case where he made a good decision. He took the data in with the information he had. I think he made the right choice. It just happened to not work out for him in this case.
And I mean, he's also so well insulated that I really don't think that he's going to have a lasting effect here. He's going to go to tribal once. We're thinking maybe at the merge, where maybe it actually would come into play, and maybe it is in his best interest to get there one more time before. That way he has his vote at the merge, but in reality he doesn't know that yet, right? So, but nothing against him for that. He made a rational decision. He understood people's motivations as they should be, and then he went with that, and it just didn't work out. And like you said about Chanel, like having this off read, I think that she was giving me real Sarah Lacina vibes from Cagayan. So Sarah Lacina, one of the best players of all time, right? But in the merge episode of Cagayan, she is boasting and bragging. And we did get a little bit of this in Winners at War about how strong her social game is. And she's saying, I have such a dead read. Like, these people need to do what I need, basically all of the things that we saw from Chanel, where she made a blunder and then was like, my social game is so strong that I can overcome it. And we saw her collapse. We saw just a total collapse. But that's the other thing too, is that, the flip side of that is Sarah Lacina in Game Changers and Winners at War, a really good player. So, it's a give and take, but this was a bad episode. Bad episode for her.
It was, but she wasn't the only player in what happened here. So we can get
for sure.
We can dive into this more, because yes, it was a bad episode for her, but I don't know if I'll take the lead here. It was not a great episode for Daniel either.
No, I agree.
It was really not a great episode for Daniel either. Let's briefly talk about Daniel and Mike's interaction early in the episode before, and I guess we'll dial it back, and then we'll talk about them getting into it. But I mean, to me, when I'm watching this unfold with Daniel, pestering Mike to get to reread this
Yeah.
whole advantage. And I guess the whole point in showing that was that Mike would have been the number one guy to get taken out if he didn't reread this whole thing. But the constant pestering, if Mike was not as chill with this as I probably wouldn't have been, Daniel was going nuts.
Well, let's be clear too. Like, Mike is being chill with it, but for a specific reason. I mean, we see later in the episode that Mike says, I've told Daniel this thing to make him feel safe, but it's clear that Mike doesn't 100% trust Daniel here. I mean, he has the comment
and he's kind of
where
right
he's like,
to.
he's squirrely, and he knows it, and I think that's a good sign from Mike's side that he's
Fair.
able to figure this out about Daniel. But it's clear that he's going along with it because he told Daniel for a purpose, and he's keeping his actions along with that purpose, right? His purpose is to make Daniel feel safe, and if Daniel is going to feel safer by letting him read this one more time, you got to be chill about it and roll with it. And I think that's a really good sign for Mike.
But Daniel's dropping idols, dropping paperwork. I mean, what kind of this guy's gonna be a lawyer? What, he's gonna drop files all over the place? Come on, Daniel.
It seems very clear to me that Daniel is a very good thinker beforehand, but not a very good improviser in the moment.
Yeah.
I think we see that again later in Tribal, and we'll get into that, when he gets confronted with all this. But
it's rare. It's rare to see someone who's so like sporadic and like disorganized in both their appearance and how they behave, and also in their thought process, right? Yeah. Like Daniel, like has moments of brilliance, and you can kind of see it. Like he's trying to see. He doesn't even really explain why he wants to read the paper, but he gets that done. Like he still gets the paper, right? Like he still is able to make a move for himself for a reason that's actually betraying Mike, not in Mike's best interest, right? But he's so disorganized that he doesn't even have the full thought process, and he leaves the idol on the floor. It's twofold,
Well, this is what it was. His whole game plan from last week was that he wanted to vote Mike out with this unplayed idol, which meant that phrase was never going to be said, and the other two tribes would not get their idols.
Yeah.
He read the fine print. He said, "Oh, no, that's not how this goes down."
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna go approach it this way. Mm-hmm. So that's why he read the fine print. But with that all being said, like we just mentioned, he was stumbling all over the place with it. And
it carries on. It carries on.
It was not clean and in the slightest.
Yeah, I think it's clear. Daniel to me, in my head, is a smart guy who's disorganized.
Yep.
And I think that disorganization and that fumbliness is, I think, ultimately going to be his downfall, but we'll see how the game goes. I mean, Daniel even says it himself in Tribal. I'm not going to win this season because I am.
He
so
knew
all
that
over
was
the
going to be
place.
the first thing he said to Jeff, right? He knew that was in his
planning
head.
it for 45 minutes.
Yeah,
2 hours.
45 minutes. He's been planning that since day one, probably before. This is his first time talking to Jeff in Tribal. He's been preparing that statement.
That was his opening statement.
All right. Well, so we've talked about Shipwheel Island. Chanel comes back thinking in her head now, which she must have realized on that boat ride back, I'm not going to have my vote, because she comes back and immediately says it to Daniel. So now I don't know
what it got, but what led her to have that vibe?
I think she just immediately realized her mistake.
Remorse.
I think she got on the boat and she realized.
That just underscores the horrible decision making.
100%. 100%. And it sucks. I mean, at least she realized it at some point. I mean, that at least has to be some slight point in her favor, I guess. But
yeah. I was just going to say real quick that she lands onto the beach and she says, "My first thought is I don't have a vote tonight." And I wanted to say, I think I actually said it out loud to the TV. No, that's your second vote. Like, that's your second thought.
Yeah, your first
thought was I want to get an extra vote. Your second thought is now that you're not going to have a vote.
Yeah.
If you just thought the second thought first, we wouldn't be in this problem.
Yeah, but now we're back on the island. We're heading towards Tribal tonight, and now we know Mike doesn't have a vote, Chanel doesn't have a vote, and Daniel, Chanel, Jenny, and Mike want to vote off Lydia, and that's not possible if there's a 2-2 vote, because there's only 4 people who can vote here tonight.
So there's a scrambling ensued, and let me just say this: Survivor came out of the COVID pause, reshaping, re-imaging, wanting to employ different types of twists, like we saw in season 41, and it ended up kind of being the same, and they're still going to have some of these elements. Like we know that the hourglass is going to come back, and the Beware Advantage is the same thing, and Shipwell Island is the same thing. It was an epic swing and miss in season 41, but they're really looking, as much as I said the epic failure was on the Jonathan front, they're really looking brilliant tonight. They are really looking brilliant tonight. This was a home run scenario for the producers.
Mm-hmm.
Mike loses the vote because of the Beware Advantage, and then the Shipwell Island actually has a palpable consequence that matters. And boom, it hits all at once and combusts into beautiful, beautiful. I don't even know if it's chemistry, chaos. It's really not chemistry, chaos at Tribal Council. So brilliantly done. I do want to say kudos to producing, because this is what they really wanted to happen in season 41. It didn't for a number of different factors, but it seems like they're taking their own risks as it is as a franchise.
Yeah.
And tonight underscores how it really can be brilliant in terms of their decision making and doing all these twists.
Yeah, I
so
really
sorry.
No, I really do think it paid off. I think it's a really great point. I think an interesting way to talk about this scramble right now might be, why don't we go through each of the two pairings, right? Because this tribe is split into a 2-2-2 at the point of this scramble. Let's talk about each of these twos and figure out what is the best thing. What did they do, and what's the best thing that they could have done in the scenario that they're in? So, I think first, maybe let's talk about Mike and Jenny here at this point. So Mike and Jenny want to get rid of Lydia. They're trying to team up with Daniel and Chanel to get rid of Lydia here, and kind of kill the Lydia high grouping that they've got on this tribe. Toast, what do you think about the plays that they made here to try to make that happen, and how do you think they could make it better? Or
Let me interject before you hop in
Yeah.
there, Toast. I think the true reasoning behind that is, and I think the real connection there is the Mike and Chanel had a bond there, and that's why they lent those two duos lent to being a little bit more together, because like they said, Daniel he didn't really trust. Mike said from the get-go, Chanel, I firmly believe that we have Chanel. That's no problem. Like Daniel's who he thought he was wavering. So go ahead,
Yeah.
Toast. But that's why I think that lent itself that way. I think Hai and Lydia were kind of exiling themselves, and that's why they were the targeted duo.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because, like, obviously as the viewers, right, we're looking at this as like a hierarchy of 2-2-2, and there's no real hierarchy at the top at any one. There's no real two at the top of the hierarchy at any given point, but the people that are the most insulated are the Daniel and the Chanel, because they have working relationships with both of the people. But I think that interestingly, both of the groups, I should say, I think interestingly, Jenny, which becomes self-evident later in Tribal when they're having this discussion, kind of sees Lydia as the odd person out, the black sheep. Like when she's talking to Hai later on, she's saying, like, this is going to keep our tribe strong. Like, I've worked with you, Hai. Like, I have a relationship with you. Like, we want to get her out because she doesn't fit into the five, right? So maybe that was just a way to strategize in the moment when, your neck is in the guillotine.
That's what I thought it was. That's what
but it seems, but I get that. But it also seems like that may be the case, that Lydia was sort of off on her own and was really connected through Hai, because it seems like everybody, when they hit the beach right after the Tribal, there was no real even like discussion. It was just like, oh, time for Lydia to go. I mean, maybe a way to look at it, I guess, a little too simply potentially, but like I think that it was consensus Lydia going, and it might have been a conversation that they had before, obviously, but I think that that's Jenny and Mike's incentive, is to keep the tribe strong, have the power, and then once Lydia and Hai are disjointed, then bring Hai back into the fold as an actual like number in their overall alliance, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that they wanted to sever ties with Hai.
Well,
Doesn't seem like it.
Just dissect it purely this way. Daniel has this connection with Mike, and he was going to get rid of Mike, and he was well, I guess in that sense, if it went that way without the reading the fine print and everything, they would have jumped ship and went with Hai and Lydia, no problem. But now that Daniel's roped in via this advantage, Mike is very tight with Jenny. So Daniel had to be roped in with them. I like I said, there was an underlying relationship here with Chanel and Mike. I'm assuming the New York roots had to be the piece there. So really, those two duos to me were just a little bit more tighter than the Hai and Lydia duo, and that's just kind of how it all unfolded. And I mean, this is where I guess we'll lead into the Hai conversation. But what a brilliant episode by by this
Well,
man.
I think really quickly too on the
I
Mike
want
and
to
Jenny
marinate in this a little
pairing.
more. Yeah,
The Mike and Jenny pairing. So I think it's a few different things, right? Kayla, I agree with you. I think that the Mike Chanel had a little connection there. I think he trusted her, and that's why I think he looped in Daniel. But I think from a Mike and Jenny side, if I'm Mike and Jenny, I want to get rid of Lydia. And by proxy, that means I'm targeting that pairing. And the reason I want to get rid of Lydia is because if we're going to get dominated in every physical challenge by Jonathan and Taku every single time, then we are fighting for second place, right? We're fighting for our lives in every single challenge. Instead of having a 2/3 chance of not going to tribal every week, we have a 50% chance of going to tribal every week, which means strength becomes more important. And if you think that Lydia is the weakest person on the tribe, that's who you got to get rid of.
I think
on top of that, Mike and Jenny seem to be reasonably good at challenges. And so a lot of times there is that decision at the beginning of a season of, are we going for the weak people first or the strong people first? And the strong people obviously want to start getting rid of the weak people so that they don't become targets, and vice versa. And so if I'm Mike and Jenny, I'm good at challenges. I want to have the thought process in my tribe, the culture of my tribe, to cull the weak so that I stick around. So it's I think it's twofold. It's my odds of staying immune have gone down from 60%, 66% to 50%. And I want a culture of we're getting rid of weak because I'm on the top of the strong pile or towards the top of the strong pile. And I want to stay there so that I'm not getting voted out.
Yeah, so that's a great way to articulate individual motivations, but from a tribal sense, it still is on face value the best option to say, let's stay strong and get rid of the one weak person, which I think lends to the point that you're making anyway. I think that it's 2-2-2, as I was trying to say, but the actual weakest person is Lydia. So Hai just happens to be connected in the twosome with the weakest link for the overall tribe, right? So I mean, we'll get to it eventually when we talk about tribal, but I agree with your points fully about individual motivation for whether or not you want to keep the strong or weak based on what you yourself are. But for a tribal consensus, it still seemed like the no-brainer to get rid of Lydia in this position because you can really fold Hai back into it afterwards and say, hey, the reason why we did this is to keep us strong as a 5. It's not because we don't like you and you're not on the chopping block next. It's just we need to stay strong. So there's an implied way out of the scenario after you get back from tribal where there's, animosity.
Yeah,
there's already
you have a
an
reason.
embedded,
Well, there's a lot that we'll get into, and I don't think it's that clear. I don't think it's that clear cut. Jenny's pitch was just a last ditch effort.
Yeah,
I mean, Hai's still on the chopping block if he goes home, and that we'll get into. He's on the chopping block when you get home. It's clear cut that he's bottom of the barrel at that point. But I want to dive into Hai's brilliance in this episode because it starts here with this with Chanel getting back to the island and the whole scrambling that happens here.
Yeah.
Chanel trying to devise this 2-1-1
Amazing
vote. Hai sniffs this out like
Instantaneously.
I mean, he comes out and he goes, Chanel's never like this. Chanel's even keeled. She's calm, and she was racy at that point. She was dodgy. She was showing anxiety out to Yin Yang. He was reading the room brilliantly.
Yeah.
He does it again at Tribal Council.
He does it again at Tribal. Good point.
He does it again at Tribal Council. But he knew something was going down from the jump when Chanel was acting weird. And I guess we'll dive in. He first says what? He first says, "Let's do 3-1."
Yeah,
I don't know what that necessarily that
3
was going to accomplish. What was that?
He wants it to be a 3-2-1, right? I mean, he wants it to be a 3-2-1, which is a cool vote split.
But what's
and
the
then
point
and
of
then
that?
Chanel said, "What's the math there?" And he said, "I don't really know." So it wasn't really well
there is
explained.
no math there. There's no
No.
math
No,
there. So
there's
Chanel
also,
had an
like,
angle. Go ahead.
Chanel doesn't have like a reason though here either. Like there's no real reason to split. Like I know she says like in case one of them has an idol, but it's like
No, I think
don't
she
know.
actually. I
No,
think
no, she did
actually
have
she
a
does
reason,
have a
yeah.
point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think she does have a point. I want to say that I think that, ironically, Chanel came to the conclusion that she made a mistake at the absolute worst time, right? So she didn't come to the conclusion when she had the opportunity to make a better decision. Then she comes to this conclusion that she made a mistake on the boat ride. The second she hits the beach, she's acting like she made a mistake and tips High off to her,
Yeah.
frantic thinking. So if she had that realization at any point in this journey, it almost would have been better to not realize that you messed up until after you had that conversation with High. But she honestly just was in the worst position possible. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, I mean, it looked really bad. The sad part to me is that if you had just had Daniel have this conversation with them, I think High would have taken that no problem.
agree.
Because Daniel is the neurotic, anxious guy.
I agree.
That would be freaking out and being like, "We need to split. We need to split. We need to split. This is what the numbers
Yeah.
are. This is what the numbers are."
He just felt, Chanel, you're off. So something else is off, right? He's
Yeah.
like, you're off.
Yeah, yeah.
Well,
I think
this has to do the conversation with the confidence that's exuding from a lot of these contestants this season, and like you just talked about with the Sarah Lucina type edit that happened here. Yeah, I mean, like Chanel had a lot of false confidence here, and she got outwitted and outplayed by High. I mean, that's
Yeah.
just what
Yeah.
happened. I actually don't know what then happened with the votes. I mean, we can go into tribal.
yeah.
now,
we'll
I
get
guess,
into that
right?
to a second. I really want to really quickly talk about though from High and Lydia's perspective, they want to go after Jenny, and I guess I don't really see
The
I-
2-2-2.
I'm interested to hear what you guys think. Why go after Jenny versus Mike?
Interesting. I think
Well,
it's
I
the
think from
same
strength
weakness
per-
thing.
Yeah.
Still
But
from
I-
a strength perspective? Okay.
But Kale, you seem to agree, right, that it does actually mathematically make sense for them to split the vote if they do trust each other, right?
Well, yeah, because it's a three-way split with 2 versus 1.
Yeah.
and then you
And-
send, assuming everybody's got votes, which High and Lydia had
which
no
is what
idea.
High and Lydia are coming to the table with. High and Lydia are coming to the table with the least amount of information
Correct.
of anyone. They don't
Which
really
was epic,
have
which was
yeah.
epic when High
the fact
realized
that
it all.
the fact that they were able to, with the least amount of knowledge, progress in the game is really, it says something about High, like you said. But it does make sense to do the 2-2-2 split if you trust everybody, because that then no matter what, you'll on the revote be able to
you'll win on
pick
the
your
revote.
pick your one, you know. But okay.
Yeah. Well, then, okay. So then, before we get into the actual tribal, I want to finally talk about Daniel and Chanel here. So Daniel and Chanel know that they're in a really tough position, and they decide to continue to try to play off of High and Lydia, still vote Lydia off with, Mike and Jenny. What are your guys' thoughts on that play? Should they have tried to swap sides?
No.
What's kind of the answer there?
I think it's clear cut from the Chanel-Mike relationship, 1. And 2, that's why the edit showed the whole Daniel-Mike situation with the reread of the whole prompt on the Beware Advantage. Daniel's tied hip to hip to Mike at this point because he wants to utilize this idol potentially to his benefit down the road. You can't cut bait with Mike, which in the preview, there's already going to be fireworks in terms of that as is now. So he could not cut bait. He had to ride with Mike, and Mike didn't want Jenny to go. So that's just how that had to unfold.
I don't know that he has to.
I actually think that this episode, results oriented, would have ended up cleaner had Daniel just changed his vote to begin with. And picked up the pieces
I don't think you
after.
have to roll with Mike. Like, I know you want that advantage.
You already
but
have all the info.
the odds of it playing to help you in the future, I think, is not 100%, definitely. And it's like, it's not necessarily a bad thing to get somebody out who has a potential advantage. Like,
Well, you're
I don't
not
know.
getting Mike out. You're not getting Mike out. You're getting Jenny out.
You're getting
So-
Jenny out.
I know.
and Mike's not going to trust you now. So no,
Yeah.
I completely disagree with
But it
you
doesn't
guys.
matter
Yeah,
if Mike doesn't trust you at that point because he still doesn't have a vote. I mean, he might have it the next week, but he's the odd one out on a tribe of 6.
But then you're also
tribe
not
of 5.
thinking about the Chanel-Mike relationship, which they
Well,
had.
this
So
Yeah, you'd have to
Chanel-Mike
convince-
relationship, right? You keep talking about, right? Is it
Yeah.
not also Daniel and Mike? I understand that they have this
Yes.
love-hate, but Like, isn't Daniel and Mike like the people that
Well,
we've
we
seen?
talked about this. We talked about this. I don't know if it was off air or last week. Mike went to Daniel to get a second opinion on what the hell's
Yeah.
going on with the Bear.
It was on it.
Beware
Yeah, we talked
advantage.
about it. Yeah.
That's really, I think, the pure reason why Daniel's even roped into this situation, because Mike
Yeah.
needed a second opinion.
No,
and that's
I actually disagree, because at the beginning of this episode, Mike specifically says, I showed Daniel, like, I know last episode he said, I'm
Yeah.
showing Daniel this because I need a second brain.
Yeah.
And me and Toast talked about this actually off air really briefly, in that I was a little confused because I was like, Mike already showed Jenny it, and we know Jenny is smart. Why does Mike think he needs another brain? He already has a brain looking
because
at
of the
it.
lost vote. Because of the lost vote.
Because of the lost vote, of course. But I
he
think
didn't pick
specifically,
Chanel.
but I think specifically he looped in Daniel. You know, he's saying it's because I need another brain, but in this episode he said, I'm trying to make him feel safe because he's a little squirrely. I think the reason that he picked Daniel to show this to is specifically because he wanted Daniel to not like start freaking out. He's like, Daniel, I trust you. Look, I'm showing you with my actions by showing you this thing.
I don't know if I buy that. Just because
That's what he said
I
in this
didn't know.
episode.
I think it was just
But
a
he said
product
something
of-
different last episode. He might have just gotten more information.
So which
from
one did we
Daniel.
believe?
Well, I think maybe he probably thought he got in bed with the wrong person with Daniel
Yes,
once he saw that he was
yes.
losing all of the stuff and
Another
he's losing
buyer's
his shoes.
remorse
true.
situation.
Another
Another
buyer's
buyer's
true.
remorse
That's
Because
true.
situation.
I mean, it's really tough to suss out these motives exactly to the T in the moment, right? We don't know exactly what Mike is thinking at any given point, but we do think that we do know he specifically said, Daniel's a good thinker. I need his brains on this. I'm going to go to him. I think all thought that Jenny would suffice. Just keep Jenny in the loop. And in fact, don't tell anyone until it's this exact scenario where you need to articulate that you do not have a vote, right? But if you're going to tell anyone, just tell Jenny. But he ended up telling Daniel. I think it's a little bit too, pie in the sky to think that you would tell someone about a very precarious advantage of yours that might incentivize them to target you in order to quell their distrust in you potentially. Like it's a little too pie in the sky. That's my thought process. But you're right that they do say something in this episode later where he's like, oh, I want to keep him, comfortable. But like Daniel's going to overthink everything. Might as well just not tell him anything.
No, I think it's purely they only knew each other for an X number of days,
Yeah.
and when it got to Y number of days, it was like, oh
I'm out.
shit.
Yeah, I think that's much more likely.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
You just mentioned up why he didn't go to Chanel. I purely think that he thought Jenny could get good eyes on it, and maybe Jenny didn't give him a read that Mike really wanted on the situation, and then he could have went to Daniel or Chanel, and he purely thought that Daniel was the smarter thinker in this.
Well, I think
situation.
too, we don't get to see in the edit too. Like, who knows if he even told Jenny that he was going to Mike? Did Jenny tell? I mean, did Jenny tell Mike to go to Daniel? Like, did Mike tell?
Yeah.
We don't know. We don't know. But let's get into this really exciting tribal. So going into this tribal, right? Let's lay out the lines here. We've got Mike and Jenny and Daniel and Chanel who want to get out Lydia, who's on a kind of an alliance here with Hai. Hai is already a little bit suspicious because of Chanel's behavior. He's being told, hey, we're doing a guys-girls split here on the vote. He's a little freaked out. We get into tribal. Let's talk about, we're talking with Jeff here. And then I think what I want to hop into first, at least, is Hai gets another signal in this tribal where Chanel whispers to Daniel.
No,
I don't think that's
even
the
before
signal.
that.
Yeah.
It was
Oh,
before
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah, you're right.
Kale,
You're
I
right.
know what it is.
Right.
Can
when he says,
I deep dive for a second?
Yeah,
Go
yeah,
ahead,
yeah.
go
All right,
ahead, go
so
ahead.
so there's a reason why I said in the beginning that Daniel had this pre-thought in his head that he wants to talk about his paranoia, right? He is only thinking a theme, as Kale has brought up and we've brought up constantly. He's only thinking about what he is thinking in the moment. He, I think, is very happy to just say this line that he's been waiting to tell Jeff. I will not win this show because I'm paranoid. He's so happy. He sticks the landing with the line. And Jeff, who's very, very good at what he does, lulls him to sleep and says, you're paranoid all the time, right? You're running around. Who keeps you calm out here, right? A very pointed thing. Daniel's still on cloud nine that he answered the question correctly, right? So he goes, first person he says is Mike. Second person he says Chanel. Then he says, then you think
says
maybe
his
Hai
mom.
if he's, but he says mom, right? So Hai is just, looking around counting the heads. He's like, well, that's two of those people and not me.
not me.
And not Lydia either, right? So if there's ever like a wah, wah signal right in your face, a red flag, while Daniel's guard is down, Jeff opened up his mind. We got a little peek into his mental state, and Hai did too, and said, I don't know. I don't think he's with me.
Okay,
Yeah.
And he
but
was right.
let me just say this too. This is point number 2 of Hai playing on a high level. I mean, he's already sniffing out what's going on back at camp with Chanel's triggers and her behavior is completely off. And then the fact that he can perk up at the right moment to sit there. I mean, he's analyzing every aspect of this game right now.
Yeah.
I mean, he's on another level in terms of how he's playing above everybody else.
I
in
want
my
to be
opinion.
clear, though. I don't think that he picks this specifically up as a red flag without Chanel's behavior earlier.
Yes.
Because
Oh,
in
fair.
isolation, Daniel saying this, to me, if I'm high, I'm like, oh, he's just trying to keep Mike and Chanel and everybody
Yes.
happy.
Yes.
Because they tried to recruit him earlier, which he told them. You know what I mean? But
You're
with
right.
that plus Chanel's behavior, then it becomes a red flag.
Yeah, yes, totally.
Now you've
There
got
was
two
a,
data points.
There was like a threshold. There was like a threshold, and then once you hit it, then now we're there.
We've hit statistical significance at this
exactly.
point. In High's mind.
And Hai, I don't know how Daniel and Chanel are not trying to quell this a little bit better. Based on what we see, Hai is perplexed. Hai's face is contorted. Is contorted in ways where he is just like, I mean, if you look at
It could be the
up
edit. It could be the
confusion, I know, but if you type in confusion on Google and click images, you're going to see Hai's face in that moment.
Yeah.
He has no idea what's going on, but they don't see
Sit like
that. I
that
guess.
for 3 minutes.
I mean, he was making faces I've never seen.
Well, I mean, it made no sense from the game of Survivor. I mean, you're missing 2 votes, and no
Yeah.
one's saying anything, and you have not been told anything. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd be freaking the fuck
Yeah.
out. So,
Yeah.
that's a fair point.
yeah.
That's a fair point, Sim. But my only piece to that is that we talked about in the early season that adaptability is the name of the game here, and his adaptability is on another level, and that's
With
all I'm
no
saying.
info. With no info.
With no info,
Yeah.
and not a lot of help from Lydia.
No.
No,
help.
well, that's something I wanted to bring up too, Kale, because
No.
you guys talked about for so long, Lydia's the wild card. Lydia's the wild card. She's been nothing. She's no strat. She is
No,
just-
it's.
I think that was
hanging
Jenny's
on.
main bargaining chip, right? She like Lydia. I think they all kind of think the way Kale thinks, right? She's just messing around. She's just out here.
she's
She's
in for
having
the fuck
fun.
around. She's in.
But that's
for
the
fuck
person
around.
I want to keep around. Somebody who's just having
sure.
fun. Like,
For
but,
sure.
let's continue with High because we get another red flag for High when Chanel turns to Daniel and whispers, "Lydia, it's Lydia." Why? That's another. To me, that's a huge another point
Yeah.
off for
Well,
Chanel.
okay,
We
so-
don't know
so
if
Why
they
are
saw,
you whispering
right?
that?
Well, hold on. So this is where I think it went down, and then obviously they can't really show confessionals here or anything like that. They were going into this with the 2 females, Lydia and Chanel. Who were they supposed to vote for?
For
They're
Jenny.
supposed to vote for Jenny, and the
They
guys
were
were going
supposed
to
to
vote for Mike.
Jenny, and then the other 2 were supposed to Hai, and Daniel was supposed to vote for Mike.
Yeah.
So how were they situating? So then,
They were well. The behind the
but then
scenes
Chanel
plan.
can't vote. But Chanel can't vote.
Yeah.
So Jenny is voting for Lydia. So the actual true votes that are outstanding right now, with that two situation going on, is that Hai and Daniel would be voting Mike, Jenny would be voting Lydia, Lydia would be voting Jenny, and then the switch is that's why Chanel is reiterating to Daniel switch it from Mike or whoever.
No,
was
no, no,
voting.
no,
No,
because he
no.
was always going to vote for Lydia.
That's what.
He was
That's
always
Cindy. That's your
on
point,
Lydia.
right? Is like
Yeah.
it doesn't even need to be
He-
said. I thought we
him
had the
and
plan.
Chanel, Daniel and Chanel were always
On the
going to
same
No,
vote
it
page.
didn't
Lydia.
need. No, it didn't need to be said. No. I understand that, but that's what it was. It was Chanel getting ahead of herself, trying to
Yeah.
reiterate the plan.
Yeah,
For
It
no
was
reason.
stupid to do it.
It's just
Yeah.
No,
another
I
signal.
wanted to just dissect the plan because what happened was
Well, the plan
Hai
that-
switched his vote.
But yeah, the plan
Hai
that they
switched
were
his vote.
telling
Yes,
Hai
that's
and
what I'm
Lydia
saying. That's
is
what
that
I'm saying.
is essentially the outcome of what they were telling them was that there was going to be 2 votes on Mike and 2 votes on Jenny, and then it'd be a 2-2-2, and then
Yes.
they would vote them out. But what they actually wanted to happen was a 1-1 vote, Mike and Jenny, and then 2 votes on Lydia.
Correct.
And that's a win.
Disperse
Not even
the
needing a
2
revote.
votes.
We're good
Exactly.
to go. And then Hai
So-
gets this 3rd signal with Lydia that I think finally puts the nail in the coffin. And in his head, he goes, I'm voting for Jenny with Lydia.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, for the record, Hai is also now sticking to his original plan to construct a 3-2-1. Because Hai is taking his vote off of Mike and putting it onto Jenny, now thinking that there will be 3 votes on Jenny, 2 votes on Mike, and two votes on Lydia, 1 vote on Mike.
1 vote on Mike, yeah.
So he is sticking to what he wanted to do originally, but he does make that ultimate decision based on the signals that he's getting at Tribal and before Tribal.
The only reason why I wanted to paint the picture is that the plan was constructed in the right way. If these signals did not happen, strike 1, strike 2, strike 3 that you're alluding to, Simi, they had it. They had it down pat. Hai would have been outwitted and outplayed by Chanel in her master plan.
There is a non-zero chance that if even just one of those red flags goes away, it could have worked. There's a non-zero chance. I don't think it's likely. I think you need at least 2 of them to go away to make it anywhere close to a 50-50.
Yeah, for sure.
But, you know, Chanel lost this episode. Like Daniel had one of them, right? So Chanel had 2 of the red flags, and Daniel had one of them.
Daniel's,
and
I think,
really
was the thing that pushed it over. I don't know what you guys think, but I think that Hai was really cued into what Jeff was trying to pry.
Well, Sim alluded to the point that the dominoes were all started to be pushed, and when
they're all starting to fall.
When Chanel was at acting crazy at camp.
Well, so they do the first vote here. Mm-hmm. The votes come out.
Yeah,
it is a 2-2 split. 2 on Jenny, 2 on Lydia. Hai has never been so confused. He thought he had never been so confused in his life 10 minutes ago.
He thought that was it.
And he reached just one level higher where he's like, where are all the fucking votes?
Yeah, where are the votes?
Where are the votes?
Yeah, because Hai is expecting it to be a 3-2-1, but he thinks that everyone else is going to see 2-2-2. And then he sees 2 votes for one person, 2 votes for another. He's anticipating a 5th and a 6th vote. And he's just like,
where are they?
I mean, I think Hai was totally lost in that instance. What is he supposed to think?
Well, because you've never seen the Beware advantage before. You haven't seen Shipwell Island in season 41, so you're like,
well,
what could this possibly be?
This was a home run swing that Survivor was taking, and I didn't say this point before. This really only worked because of the Beware advantage happening, because the risk was taken by both of them, and then because this tribe had 2. If this tribe was Taku or Ika, where it was 5 versus 1, this wouldn't happen.
Yeah,
it's Christmas morning.
This was all around perfect for Survivor from a production standpoint.
And Kale, also think about it. Like, even this outcome that we're seeing right now is so explosive and good, but the alternative, the actual plan that was put forth by Chanel and Daniel, had that worked out where it was a 2-1-1, we had never seen anything like that at all in Survivor history. So it's actually allowing for this emergent behavior to happen, right? It's like sowing the seeds for new things to be seen.
Cool votes.
And it's the production had its cake and ate it too, right? There was no losing in this scenario. No matter what happened, it was going to be great.
I mean, I have to say, last season I was kind of meh on I was definitely meh on Shipwell Island. I liked the Beware advantage because it was fun.
Nothing worked.
I liked it, but nothing worked. This season I'm like, I would love to see this sort of stuff in the future where you're risking votes, because people losing votes and then having to talk to people about it, I think it's so much fun. I think it creates so much good play. But so they do the revote now, right? So they do the revote. It's a 2-2. They do the revote, and it's a 1-1.
Yeah.
And again, Hai is like,
gone.
There are less votes now than there was before.
and
what is going on?
Jeff comes out with a flashlight. He's like, who's who? Who's voting? Who's not voting? Right?
And he didn't want to do this. He didn't want to do this.
I'm very surprised that he said anything. I thought he was just going to not explain.
I know.
And just let it go.
He had to make sure that that Chanel knew and Mike knew that they actually do not have a say.
Yeah.
Right? Like, he needed to.
They don't have a say, but they're also drawing rocks. That was crazy.
Yeah, they're also drawing rocks.
That was crazy to me as well.
Because you can get voted out. If you can get voted out without a vote, you can draw a rock without a vote. But I think what they should have done.
Fair. Go ahead.
I think what they should have done for deciding it being unanimous is just make it a written. You can make it a written thing so that you don't reveal it.
But once the rules of Survivor state, right? You do if it's tied, you do a revote. If you can't break the revote, right? With a conversation. It has to be a unanimous conversation.
But why not have the conversation and then just write it down? And
No,
then you can
because-
see, is it unanimous or not?
Because the whole point is to almost really
It has
make
to be in
it.
Make it
unison.
more personal.
It needs
Yeah,
it needs
yeah.
to be a really, really big decision to go to rocks. Like it needs to
Agreed.
be like you can't just like mistakenly get to
Willy-nilly,
rocks.
yes.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
it needs
Yeah,
to be
yeah,
like
yeah.
I am voting this way. Here I am. I'm speaking, and this is
in
my
front
vote.
of you. Yeah. Okay.
And there's
I
also
agree.
that
I agree.
there's also the negotiation aspect of it, right? Because now we're here, it's 1-1, and I'll start talking about it the way that Daniel does by saying my first premise, right?
I am not going to rocks.
Yeah, which is basically showing your cards before
Can't
anything
say that.
happens.
Well,
It's-
okay,
Not say
hold on,
that.
hold on a second here. Hold
We're
on a second
there.
here.
We are there, but go.
No. I know that we're there, but once it got to this once High changed the vote, it was always going to go in this direction. This might be a hot take.
No,
from
I
me,
agree
but
with you.
It was
I agree with
always
you.
going to
Inevitable.
go
You
in this
couldn't do
direction.
anything.
Meaning it was
Well,
gonna
no.
Jenny was
meaning
gonna go
Liddy,
home.
Yes, meaning
Yeah.
Jenny
Yes.
was going to
It's
go
a
home.
lock.
I totally
And-
agree.
And
I totally
this is
agree.
why. This is why. High either takes a 100% chance he's on the bottom of the barrel
Mm-hmm.
by letting Lydia go home, or he takes a 25% chance at going home with rocks.
Well, right.
You're taking the 25% chance, other than the 100% chance, every single time.
Not
Yeah,
only
but-
that, dude.
yeah.
Either way, you gain a forced ally who's the bottom of your thing, right? So there's two outcomes, right? Either Daniel changes his vote on the second vote to Jenny, in which case he's throwing in his lot with you because he's leaving his other people, or you have the outcome that actually happened where they go to the rocks decision, and Daniel has to come over to you anyways. In which case, Daniel isn't going to go back to his old alliance. They hate him now.
Well, interestingly, I think that Daniel actually digs his own grave there, where he actually loses Chanel in the process. I mean, he does this.
100%.
Yeah,
That
he
was
threw
an
her
epic
under the
failure.
bus.
Yeah, that was an
100%.
epic failure.
He loses this interaction based on changing his vote, right? So like on a very 10,000 foot view, he loses the tug of war with High. But really, he loses a lot more than that, because he could have just said, you know what, High, I enjoy working with you. I want to go far with you in the game, and I really don't want to go rocks. I'm sorry, everybody else. I'm going to change my vote, and that's the way it is. I don't want to go to rocks, and just do it. But instead of doing that, he sort of threw Chanel under the bus by trying to diffuse the responsibility off of himself to say, hey, Chanel, make this decision for me, which is ridiculous. Just
Stupid.
do it.
The reason he did this is because the lines were drawn. And this is why I said once the lines were drawn and High had nothing to lose. That's my point. High had nothing to lose by going to rocks. He's on the bottom of the pack either way.
Yeah.
Daniel tries to save face in this cockamamie way, and I don't really understand why he does it this way. I squarely, if he holds his ground, I think Mike and Chanel can understand at the end of the day and just turn to them and say, guys, you guys want to pull rocks or switch vote? And if High's just holding steadfast in his viewpoint, my thing is that it's way easier for High to hold steadfast than it was for Daniel.
You're right.
Because High had nothing to lose anymore. He was on
High's
the bottom
only
of the
choice
pack.
at this point, which I think it's brilliant of him that he recognized this, was
Mm-hmm.
I am not changing my vote. That is it. There is no convincing me. That's the
Yeah,
only way he
but-
can go. You guys might disagree with this, but I think honestly it is not a good play. But I think Daniel comes out of this better if he decides to just go to rocks.
Well, with how he approached it, yes.
With how he approached it. I think
No.
that is a better choice than what he
No.
did.
Yes.
No, it's
Yes,
way too early
because
to
now,
go to rocks,
now,
guys.
Now,
you can't
now
just
it's
go to
him.
rocks.
It's him, High, and Lydia, and he's on the bottom of that pile.
He's not in any pile, in my opinion. He's not in any pile.
But he has to. That's what I mean. Is like now his strategy at this point, at the end of this episode, is I have to get in with these other two because that's my only option now.
Okay,
and that
well-
might not even work.
So first of all, just to backtrack a little bit, Daniel shows his cards right away, which actually helps High in an easier decision. What was already what we think an easy decision based on math and based on his expected value in the long term is now made easier by Daniel, just giving him his motivations out loud, right? Daniel is the first
course,
person
that
to
makes
talk.
the dec- that
He's the
makes the
first person. He
decision a
loses.
lot.
I mean, it's like in business, right? Like, the first person who talks loses, like, Jordan Belfort shit, right? So, but Daniel wants to put on this whole show. High is biding his time, just listening, and he basically just says out loud, I don't want to go to rocks.
I'll do anything to not go to
You don't have
rocks,
to tell anyone that.
and
That's
then-
you're the only one making that decision, Daniel. Like, keep
Yeah.
it to yourself. Let's see what High thinks. And
Especially because Chanel and Mike didn't actually have to make a decision.
Yeah. So yes, exactly. That's another point that I wanted to make. It's really only your decision in this scenario. But I actually fully disagree that it was an option to go to Rocks, because
It was an option
for Daniel. I just think that there's like the game in this moment. This is your first tribal council, right? Like, so you are thinking like this is like going to decide the rest of the game. But like the only way that actually happens is if the actions that you take right now make that a reality. So like there's so many ways for you to save face in this moment, right?
But he's already lost. That's what I mean. He's already eliminated the political way forward.
Yeah, but
once you've eliminated that, I honestly
you don't think he could turn to High?
You
don't think he could turn to High and say, "Hey, I don't want to go to Rocks. I'll be honest with you. I know that you have more to gain by going for Rocks, so I completely understand that you don't want to change your vote. I want to have a conversation about how you and I can work together moving forward, because I do like working for you, working with you. It just so happens that our tribe consensus was that Lydia was the weakest link. You're in a position right now where you're not going to change your mind, and I get that. But let's move forward. No animosity. We'll take out Jenny and we'll reconstruct.
Yes.
But he had literally already thrown Chanel under the bus.
Yeah, he already threw Chanel under the bus.
With
that
Chanel
was a
under the bus,
move.
like I think.
But he didn't need to do that. He didn't need to do that.
Yeah, but you're not understanding Simi's point, and that's why I'm agreeing with Simi. Once he did all of this, he is on the bottom of the barrel. If Vati goes to tribal next week, Daniel's target number one.
Okay, so I guess I misunderstood the starting point of when we're deciding that it's a good idea for him to go to Rocks. I was going from it like no one has said a word. Jeff is saying discuss.
No one says a word. There's easy way to do it. You turn to your alliance and you say, "Hey guys, I like."
What I just said, right? Exactly.
Yeah,
like
you
work
do
your
that
way around it.
100%. But once you burn Chanel under the bus and you capitulate to High here, I honestly think going to Rocks is better than what he did.
Yeah, exactly.
Because then it's like, I didn't change my vote. I'm still with you guys.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
and I'm taking the risk on myself.
And there's a possibility that High goes home. So
yeah, there's odds.
You're right. But
that's the only way you have
Understood,
some percentage
25% chance
that the other alliance goes home.
Yeah. So
otherwise, it's 100% that somebody in your alliance goes home.
Yep.
So rank order right now. When Jeff says discuss, best possible move is to just sort of fold right away. Understand the motivations and change your vote to Jenny.
No. I think fold with a conversation with the other two.
Okay,
fine.
So
I think your best move is to then say, "Hi, I know I fucked you over. My alliance. What are we doing right now?"
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's your best move, because then you're still coalescing, because even if you lose Jenny, you're still in the majority.
Yeah, in a weird way, I feel like he was trying to do that, but he did it in a way where Chanel was thrown under the bus. Like
I think that was his alliance. So no, he didn't.
Yeah, I think he just immediately capitulates to High. He goes, "Hi, no, I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to."
Yeah, that is bad. I agree. But that is still better than doing that without throwing Chanel under the bus, right? Like capitulating to High without bringing Chanel into it, saying,
I think that's
this
fine,
was
because
Chanel's
then you could
idea.
justify it with your alliance and say, "Hey, I'm trying to get him to a good place to make a decision."
Yeah.
But like, I think you got to just do the math in your head. Even if I lose Jenny and I stick with these two, I'm still in the majority. And
whose perspective are we in?
Daniel's. From Daniel, you got to do the math in your head and say, even if we lose Jenny and we have to capitulate to High, we're still in the majority. And also, I'm still kind of in a better position now.
Yeah.
Because now Mike has lost his closest ally.
Yeah. But he also
and Chanel can work. From Daniel's position, though, I think he believes that him and Chanel are closer than Chanel and Mike are, at least.
Yeah.
So it's like,
what do you think? You think that if their original vote was targeting Mike, who now is impotent without a vote, and now it was a decision between Mike and Lydia, where Daniel could then vote Mike out, pull Jenny back into the fold with Chanel, and still have a 3-2 majority against them without making a mess? Do you think that decision would be easier for him? I know that he comes to the conclusion after reading the note that, the idol, if we vote him out, the idol's going to come back into play, so it's not in my best interest to get rid of Mike. But in the scenario where Mike is the one getting the votes instead of Jenny, right? Now, you have an ally that you can go back to that does have a vote. Whereas voting out Jenny right now makes the prospect of going back to Chanel and Mike less appetizing because you're still only have 2 votes.
I see.
Well,
I see.
didn't matter.
You might not. You could potentially not have a Mike vote when you stick with them. I think you still have to take the risk though, because even still, you're in a 2-2, and like there's still stuff you can do.
Well,
Yeah.
and here's the other piece of it is that they weren't. He must have been completely forward thinking in at least the sense that he thought that this could be an outcome, and he dove into throwing Chanel under the bus right away. He that was a piece of how he was going to approach this.
But I think that goes back to
there's
how
so many
bad of an
people
improviser
just say the
he
name
is.
though. You know, we're talking about Daniel still, right? We're saying
Yeah,
Daniel.
Daniel.
When you say
Yes,
he.
yeah, Daniel.
Okay, all right. There's so
I
many.
thought that's what we were
there's so
talking about the entire time.
No, I know, but there's so many players. Like we're going back to High's perspective. We're going to Daniel's perspective.
Let's just
wanna
play
make
this
sure.
out. Let's just play this out. When the tie happened, I think it's as simple as this. I don't think High goes to rocks. I don't think he ultimately ever goes to rocks. Simi painted the picture. I think literally Daniel goes, High, I'm sorry, but I'm not talking to you right now. I'm talking to Mike and Chanel. And we sit there and we say, we're not budging. And that's it. Clear cut. Don't throw anybody on the bus. Don't talk about anything else. High's not going to go to rocks. It's not
You don't
worth
think
it.
High's going to rocks?
No,
thought the whole
I think
point was
High
that
would
he
go to
is.
rocks. I think High
That
would
was
go
the
to
whole-
rocks because the odds are in his favor.
That was the whole
thing.
thing we discussed, right? High would go to rocks.
I understand that because of the piece, but then he saw the cracks.
You're saying if he doesn't see that Daniel is capitulating right away, maybe he would fold, but he already has all the info.
Because at the end, but at the end of the day, it's still super scary to have a % chance that you're going to go home at that night in time. You have
I
no
think though,
other
if you're
time
high,
to-
I think if you're high
No,
though,
I understand
that.
I'm going to rocks. If
You're
I'm
going
high.
to rocks if you're
I'm going to
high.
rocks because if Lydia goes home right now,
I
I'm
understand.
next. That's it.
I understand.
I'm going home
that,
next week.
But you're next if you go to tribal before the merge. So it's still you still have to come to that agreement in your head. That's shit. There's a chance that they don't go back to tribal. So that's
I
still
guess
gotta be
that's true.
resonating
I guess
in his
that's true
head.
because even if
Yeah.
you go to rocks and Mike goes home or whatever, right?
Yep.
You're still in the minority alliance.
Yep.
You're still going home, really. Like,
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. In that case, it's actually worse for you.
yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. There was
But at least
a way,
at
there
3-2,
was a
you
way
can convince
do
somebody to
this
come
if you were
over. If you're in
Daniel.
a 4-1, you're screwed.
It was an
I
epic
guess-
failure. It was an epic failure from
the moral
Daniel's
of the
standpoint.
moral of the story is Chanel and Daniel both completely lost their composure, and High was cool as a cucumber, and maybe that was just what we were
Stock
shown.
report.
Yeah,
Stock
maybe,
report.
maybe that was just what we were shown, but it really seemed like High read the room in real time, was really given, on a silver platter, Daniel's motivations. He didn't really have to think it through. I get, Kale, what you're saying about the bluffing. If Daniel said, I'm willing to go to rocks when he really wasn't. But High was given that information, and now he's sitting there saying, I'm sorry, Jenny, I'm not moving. And that's it. And he
Yeah.
just stood by it. And I really
no,
respect it. I mean, he crushed it. He crushed it.
crushed tonight's
And people were
episode.
crumbling around him. He won. He won by like a very large margin here.
Well, that I'm on my stock report. I've had a 1 up graph and a 1 down graph. On my stock report today, I did 3 up graphs for High. It's the first
Well,
time I've done that.
let's get into the stock report then.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
I think we've really hit everything on that we wanted to talk about in this episode. Kale, let's start off with you. What's your stock report this up?
I'm buying High. I really didn't touch on any of the other tribes. We weren't shown Eco once, right? I don't even think we were shown Eco once.
No.
So I didn't even touch the other tribes. I said High I'm buying a lot of High right now, and
You're buying High.
yeah, I'm buying High.
Selling low.
And we said it. Daniel and Chanel were big time losers from this episode.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
here's what it's going to come down to for me. And that's why I think Daniel's actually the bigger loser in this scenario is that
Ooh.
Chanel comes and she still at least has Mike without a vote. I understand that.
Without a vote.
I understand that, but Chanel's not working with Daniel at all for 2 seconds.
And I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities that Chanel could go to High and Lydia and be like, yeah, Daniel screwed me over. Let's get rid of Daniel. That's
Well,
100%.
Yeah,
You
do
I get that you can say that, but don't you think that Daniel probably in the moment that he realized that Chanel didn't cast a vote felt betrayed in the sense that Chanel made the wrong decision? Like I'm trying to I guess his motivations for throwing
what, at
Chanel under the
Shipwheel?
bus.
At Shipwheel?
he
Yeah,
knew
like-
that was going to happen.
No, he knew, but why would well, he didn't know for sure, but he probably deduced that she was losing her vote. But like, I would feel betrayed if my main ally did something so selfish without thinking about it and now put us in this position. I would be pissed.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah, but you can't let that show.
That.
No, yeah, he let it show. I agree. But I'm trying to, I guess, get to the motivations of why he was so against Chanel in that moment. Like, blatantly.
No,
was-
I think
it
it's
was
I
as-
think
it
it's
was
a
as clean-
kid who gets his hand stuck in the cookie jar,
Yes.
and he freaked out. He was
Yeah,
doing
I agree.
anything he
I
could
agree.
to try to save his ass, and he made it worse for himself.
I agree.
that's
When he
'cause
was in the
because
safest
'cause-
position too. It's
Yeah,
like, it's bad.
he was moving on to next week. He said, "I will you guys work with me?" He was like, "Please,
Yeah.
please work
Yeah.
with me." And which
Great
in no
thing to
way
be
do I
asking.
long term want to work with somebody
Yeah.
like that. I don't
Yeah.
want to work with someone
there's
like
no
that
way.
long term.
So for
I
me-
agree with you, Simi. I think Chanel can turn around and if I'm high and Lydia, as long as I can get along with Chanel, I'm down to work with her over this wishy-washy Daniel guy.
Yeah.
I'd even work with. I think Mike has a good chance of working with them too.
Yeah, I
'cause,
don't know their
he
relationship.
Never, he never
Mike-
backstabbed them.
Yeah.
I don't think Mike has had a conversation with either of those two shown.
No,
on the
absolutely.
season yet.
But
Yeah.
let's stay on track. So, Kale,
Yeah.
you're buying high. You're selling
Yeah.
Daniel and Chanel here. Toast. What's your stock report this
so
week?
for me, there's only one person on the uptrend for me, and her name is Tori. She's
no.
no, I'm
Fuck,
just
I
messing
No
around.
more
forgot Drea. I
Tory.
forgot Drea.
No,
I forgot
I'm just
Drea.
messing around. It was actually kind of nice to get reprieve from the other tribes, and we got to dive into Vati. Obviously, High wins. I think he was able to negotiate a very precarious situation with the least amount of information, and he was able to maximize his opponents in this case. Their,
With no help.
their blunders. I mean, he was able to really make every one of their mistakes and maximize it to his own benefit, which was really cool. And he was
absolutely.
doing it in real time. He like, there was no plotting. There was no there was no live tribal, by the way, which was also nice.
No.
There was no
Yeah.
talking. There was no nothing. It was just High in real time, figuring out what everyone's motivations were. And like, and it was nice. It was cool because he was, like I said, I mean, I said it a couple times. It was in real time. He is watching this happen. He has an idea of what's going to happen. He changes his vote. So now it's going to be a different thing than what they expect. But now flip it all the way around. It's not what he thought. It's not what they told him. It's something brand new. How am I going to negotiate this? And he completely used, his enemy in this case, their weaknesses against themselves. Like he totally outmaneuvered them. He totally did. And Jenny
It was
actually
brilliant.
Jenny, I hope you guys watched to the end, right? When she's like, High is going to slit these throats. Like, High is coming for
Yeah.
blood. Like, they better watch out
He's out
because
there.
she must have felt betrayed by him in some sense because she was like, High, like, we can work together, whatever. And he looked at her in the eye and said, Jenny, I'm sorry. I'm sticking with Lydia.
Well, and this is, I'll just say this briefly, and this is just my forecast. I think High was brilliant tonight. I think High will be brilliant moving forward. He needs a bigger and better alliance, though. He can't.
For sure.
Lydia's not.
He might get one. He might walk into one right now. There's a
Well,
lot
yeah,
of
maybe, yes.
openings.
I mean, we'll
There's
see.
a lot of
No, no,
openings.
Absolutely, but if you forecast this out and this Taku can remain strong, we know that Ika's imploding as we speak currently. God only knows what's happening as we speak. But Taku's pretty strong. So my forecast would be that those four, if they remain, they're going to be a force to reckon with. So High's going to need to solidify a bigger alliance.
Yeah. Well, he decimated two twosomes. With one twosome, he decimated two of them. He completely rearranged
Correct.
their motivations and their hierarchy. And he did it
Correct.
with the least amount of information. So he's actually probably going to move into this next phase right now with Lydia as a very strong ally who's
Yes.
completely devoted to him for what
Correct.
he did. And now there's free agents up for grabs.
I understand that, but my point, I'm just looking at the whole grand scope
Yeah.
here. I'm telling you, I would never work with Daniel after this, even if I'm high.
Yeah,
I can't
it's
do
tough.
It.
It would be
I
tough
can't,
to.
I
I
cannot
think.
do
Yeah,
it.
I think
No,
you
I
got to see
agree.
how it plays out next week.
So Daniel's not even a free
Simi.
agent I would touch with a stick.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Simi, who's going up? Who's going down?
Yeah, my stock report this week, I couldn't agree more with what you guys are saying. Obviously, I'm buying High. I'm selling Daniel and Chanel. The other person I want to mention too, again, is I'm buying Omar this week again.
Yeah.
I thought he, did a great showing on that Chippewa Island, was really showing us his intelligence and his willingness to look at other people's motivations.
For sure.
I love seeing that. I'm excited to see where this season takes us. This was an explosive episode.
Yeah, it was great.
I cannot wait to see what happens next. And I'll talk to you boys next week.
Yeah.
3 for 3 so far, man. I can't wait.
Absolutely. And if you guys are watching on YouTube, please give us a like, give us a subscribe.
Yeah,
it really helps us out. Rate and review on Apple Podcasts, all that jazz really helps us out. And thanks for listening this week.